hopefully. Hi, and welcome back to It's Not Rocket Science 5 Questions Over Coffee. I'm delighted today I've been joined by Julia Felton. Julia is an expert in, helping to fix trust issues within teams using rewilding leadership. So she's really going to help us to understand exactly how we can rebuild those trust issues, which so often dog startups, even rapidly scaling and growing companies. So Julia, welcome to It's Not Rocket Science 5 Questions Over Coffee. I hope you've got your coffee in front of you. I've actually got a fruit tea at the moment, but that's because it's after Christmas. I try to be careful with my body.
Well, me too, Stuart. I've got ginger and lemon here, so I've been off the caffeine.
It's the only way to live. So let's start by understanding, the sort of person you're trying to help. You're obviously trying to help somebody that's got a problem. But how would you recognise them? What would they be saying? What would they be doing in order to sort of
Sure.
for you to be able to say, well, that's exactly the sort of person I'm trying to help?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I think what typically happens is what people come to me with and what actually the problem is are very different. And I think often what we find in business, isn't it? We have this danger of treating the symptom rather than the cause. So sort of people come to me and they go, oh, my team's not functioning properly, Julia, and people don't trust each other. There's a lot of bickering going on. We're not getting the results we want. There's people are working in silos. Nobody collaborates together. Those are the sorts of things that my clients are saying. And my clients range from, smaller SMEs up to larger corporates, and these kinds of problems exist throughout many types of organizations. So anywhere where you've got people involved, really, because at the end of the day, trust drives everything in business, right?
And tell me, what would some of those? I mean, you just talked about sort of smaller SMEs, large corporates. I mean, they've tried everything before, haven't they? They've done the courses, they've sent people off on the training courses, they've done the online stuff, they've done everything they can, and it's still not fixing it. So, what are the sort of things that they are trying that you break through and you find that even having done this stuff, they've still got these issues?
Sure. So I think, if we distill it back down and we go to, well, what's really the cause of what's going on in the business rather than symptoms? The biggest challenge, if I was to sum it up like that, is it's not this lack of skill or ambition or desire, but it's actually all to do with misaligned energy. So we've got brilliant purpose-driven leaders out there. They've built often fast-growing businesses. But somewhere along the way, this momentum turns into mayhem, right? And the team's busy, but it's not productive. People, having loads and loads of meetings. We know this meeting fatigue, right? The progress stalls, everyone's working harder, but people aren't working collectively together. They're not pulling in the same direction. So I call that the performance paradox, because what we're seeing is companies chasing these results so hard, but they've become really disconnected from the very people and the energy that creates them. So what happens is these businesses start running on logic and process, rather than what we really need is this connection and trust and flow. And so I think what I really see leaders craving is a much more natural, sustainable way of leading, where we get everyone pulling in the same direction. And we stop forcing the results and we start getting the results flowing naturally, because everyone's working in their right energy. And as you know, Stuart, I'm very passionate about nature. I reference everything back to the natural world. And, when we look at the natural world understands the ebb and flow of energy and how it goes in cycles. cycles. And that's what we're not really seeing in business right now, is leaders really understanding that. And it's interesting, we're recording this right after Christmas, right, where people have actually had an opportunity to kind of rest and reset themselves for this year. But we tend to wait till Christmas, right? And we take a week or 2 weeks off, try and rest and reset, and then we try and go for another whole year. And that's not feasible for people.
So what are some of the things that you then introduce into the business in order for them to understand that it's that, to develop that ebb and flow? What is it you do to help them essentially reset on a more regular basis?
Yeah, well, obviously, as we just talked about there, reset the rhythm and flow and recovery. So for me, that's actually about leaders taking time out to rest and relax. Yes. And it's that psychology of slowing down to speed up. That, instinctively we know that, but everything's saying to us, if I take the afternoon off, I'm not going to get everything done. But I don't know about you, Stuart, but I know when I step away from my desk, if I'm really struggling with something, all of a sudden, when I'm away from my work and what I'm doing, I get all these insights. So it's about understanding that in order to get into flow, we actually have to go through a period of resetting ourselves and resting and stepping away from the problem in order to get back. It's the good old adage, isn't it? We get our best ideas in the shower wherever it is, out on walks and stuff like that. So I think it's about really purposefully crafting time into our weekly schedules to do that, because I think most people, they go into the office, foot to the metal, go all day, and we get to the end of the day and then they're like, I'm not even sure what I've accomplished, because we've just been being that busy fool that, you and I know I've talked about, we're spending all this time doing things, but we're not doing the right things that we need to do.
Yeah.
So, if we look at some of the mistakes that people are making around this, is the first thing we often see companies doing is we put all these tools, right? We've got problems, like you said, teams are working in silos. There's no collaboration. So we throw tools at the problem. We maybe buy, a collaboration platform like Trello or Asana or something like that to try and make everyone work more effectively together. And that rarely solves the problem, right? Or we send people on team building away days or training courses. And all of these can have some marginal gain for the business, but they don't really get to the shifting the underlying energy or trust dynamics that are actually blocking performance. And for me, the way that we change those trust dynamics is actually by really slowing down and investing time in building relationships. It's this importance of social capital within business, right?
Yes.
And sometimes it seems a bit frivolous, right? We're stopping and we're talking to somebody in the corridor. But I don't know about you, but in the days when we were all in the office and I was in the corporate world, I got all my information from those informal chats. That's where you knew what was going on. Of course, the trouble that we've got right now is with so many people working remotely, all of that informal communication, you might want to say, isn't getting shared, and you don't know what's going on in another team, which you would have found out because you walked with somebody and you went and grabbed lunch with them when we used to go out to the sandwich bars for lunch or whatever, or you were making your coffee. So I think there's a big problem there, that we're not spending enough time investing in building that social capital.
Yeah, indeed.
And
indeed.
Go on, sorry.
No, indeed. I'm just agreeing with you. Absolutely agreeing with you.
Yeah. And I think one of the other mistakes that I'm seeing companies make is that when things aren't going well, there's a tendency, particularly if it's a smaller founder-led business, for the founders want to take everything back, to control everything, right? If I control everything, it's going to work better. More meetings, more KPIs, more oversight. But actually, all that's doing is draining the founder's energy. But more importantly, it's signaling to your team members that you don't trust them. We're not allowing them to get on. They don't feel empowered because there's so much micromanagement. And actually, really what our team members are looking for is for us to trust them and to empower them to get the job done, and then get out their way and leave them to do it. And when we've got that, then people will get on and do the job. And then the other lens that I often see going on here is when we've got problems, we want to fix the people. We always think it's a people problem. And rather than think about, well, what is the potential our team members have got to unlock? How can we leverage them more effectively in the business? What new responsibilities can we give them? What new opportunities can we give them to help them thrive? Can we redefine their roles to give them a role which is more naturally aligned to what they love to do? Because we all know we've got more energy for the things we love to do, right? And so if your role, you're spending 50% of your time doing things you don't love to do in it, you're never going to be as productive as if you've got a role maybe where you've got 80 or 90% of the time doing the things you love. Now, the caveat I would just say against this is we're all going to have to do things in our role that we don't love. That's just life. But, we want to spend the vast proportion of our time. And when we can start redefining roles so that people do that, it makes a massive difference to their performance, their productivity, and then ultimately the productivity of the business. So, I reflect back often to my corporate role where I didn't understand about energy and the best roles that people could go in. And I had this data manager, her name's Jane. And every single appraisal, I was like, Jane, you need to get better at spreadsheets, because, you're running the data center and that's what you need to do. Failing to realize that her complete zone of genius and what she brought to my business was actually her ability to rally the troops around. She was a great collaborator, a great people person. And I didn't leverage her skills effectively. So she wasn't as happy as she could be. And I wasn't getting the best results out of her.
Yeah, no, I remember very early on in one of the first businesses that I founded, somebody took me on tight. It was one of the non-executives that sort of came in to help the business. He said, "Are you asking the people that you're working with anything about what they do when they go home?" And I sort of looked at, I'll be honest, I looked at him and went, "What's that got to do with this?" As if somehow he was talking complete nonsense. And he said, "You'll find those people go home and they run scout groups, they run charity bazaars, they run charities, and they run them brilliantly. All of those skills are open to you if you only knew about them." And I looked at him and thought, that's a huge insight that I've got to think about. And it was back to what you were saying there. It's about communication, isn't it? I hadn't bothered to say to these people, "What else are you up to?" And they turn around and say, "Oh, I run a scout group." "Oh, you're good at admin." And that's a really useful thing to know, because oftentimes people come into work and they sort of drop all these skills at over their shoulder at the front door, and then walk in and sort of just come in and do their job, don't they? Because they don't think they have to bring any of those skills with them, because I'm at work now. And then they go home, they pick up all those skills again, and they take them home and they use them very, very effectively. So sometimes it does mean that we've just got to speak to each other, ask what's going on, and then go, "Wow, that's a really useful skill that we could use," and then learn to let them get on with it.
Yeah, and then they feel more empowered. They feel trusted. They know that they've been heard, and it's a win-win all round at the end of the day. But it's so important for us to really know our team members, like you say, what motivates them, what inspires them, and what the skills are that they've got that they're not bringing to the workplace that we could really leverage more effectively.
Yeah, brilliant. Julia, I'm sure that there's I know you've given us some very valuable information to stick into our vault, which is at www.systemize.me/free-stuff. Gosh, there's an awful lot of words in there for immediately after our longish break. Talk to us about what you've got available for people to be able to sort of advice, guidance that you could give people, which they can tap into, and all of this will be available in the vault.
Yeah, sure. So where I always suggest that people start is I've got a turbocharge your team quiz, which you can get at businesshorsepower.com/quiz. And it's about 15 questions that just really helps you identify where your team's energy is getting drained. And what I often talk about is something called Teamship, which we'll get onto in a minute when we talk about books and stuff. But Teamship is about how do you run your business rather than leadership. It's all about teamship, people getting together. And then when you take the quiz, you actually get a free copy of my ebook on how to create a business that runs on Teamship and the 3 pillars that actually underpin that. And then anyone who's taken the quiz is also welcome to join me for a turbocharge your quiz audit, where I help you unpack the results of the quiz in more detail, so that you can start to put together a kind of a short plan on how you want to change things in your business going forward.
And I can assure you, because I've been on and had a good look at that stuff. If you go to systemize.me/free-stuff, you'll see all of the details of that. And Julia is really good at this stuff, so you will be pleasantly surprised when you see the level of detail that this goes into. Julia, yes, you're right. We're about to get on to other things. What was it that brought you to your understanding? You talked about your corporate career. You've talked a little bit about your passion for nature. How did you get to now books, courses, programs that enabled you to understand that Teamship was actually the thing which needed to drive your day-to-day existence in your life now?
Yeah, such a great question, because I think, once I left the corporate world, like so many of us do, you see things in the rearview mirror, right, that you didn't see when you were in it. And, I look back and I just got really frustrated with the way that we were running and leading businesses. And as everything, I looked to nature, and horses were a big part of my life. And what I looked to was the way that horses actually operate as a unity. That a team is a horse herd is always concerned with the health, harmony, and unity of the herd, how to keep it all together. And they employ something I call shared leadership at the time. And shared leadership is this concept of, as a leader, you don't need to know everything. And let's face it, in the good old days before Mr. Google, and we were in the industrial era, it was probably true that the factory manager, they did know everything, right? But that doesn't exist today. So I think for any leader today, they want to know that it's okay to share the leadership with each other. And horse herds do this so well. And we see this in a lot of other dynamics of animals in nature, but they share the leadership. They realize that not one animal can keep the whole herd safe. So in the horse herd, they share the leadership between everybody, but there is a lead mare and a lead stallion within the herd that have specific roles, and then everyone else in the herd looks for the danger. And I was like, well, that would be so much better if that was a model that happened in business, where everybody in the organization is responsible for the health and safety of the organization. So even though you are on the production line, or you're in the admin team, or whatever it might be, you still have a duty of care to ensure that the business is going to stay successful. So if you see a competitor doing something, you should be able to speak up and say, did anyone else notice that going on over there? That could be a threat for us. So it's all these eyes and ears looking out. So it was when I read Keith Frazee's book, Never Lead Alone, he introduces this concept of teamship, which is effectively shared leadership. And I was like, it gave me kind of a framework and some language to use. So I've now created my own framework. It's called the Unbridled Teamship Roadmap, which helps leaders create this high level of trust, adaptability, and shared energy within their teams that we see particularly within horse herds, for example. So Keith Frazee, I have to acknowledge him, he kind of gave me the language for this, but it was my life experience of partnering with the horses and seeing things in the natural world, particularly when I lived in Africa, that kind of brought these two worlds together. And I was like, this is a new framework for how we need to lead in the 21st century that is just going to be much more compelling and engaging for people.
And I think you're right. The days of the command and control have largely gone, haven't they? Because there are too many moving parts, too quickly moving for you to be able to control everything. And so unless you're prepared to allow the leadership to spread, it will be impossible.
And you just become a bottleneck as well as the leader if you try and keep it all together, right? Because everything's moving so fast, you've just not got the capacity to make that many decisions all day, every day. So we've got to share it out. Otherwise, your business is likely to stumble and falter just because you've just not got the brain power to do it all, right? So, you can actually end up being the biggest risk factor in your business if you don't share the leadership.
Yeah, that's absolutely. So, Julie, there must be one question that I haven't yet asked you that you really want me to ask, which will sort of open up the eyes of people who are currently thinking, this is kind of me, but I'm not sure. What is the question that you think I should have asked? And as you obviously know the question, you will probably also know the answer. So what would the answer to that question be?
Well, I hope I know the answer. I think it's this reframe about how do we reframe leadership, because we're still seeing leadership through this lens of performance and results. And I get that we've got to get that. But actually, how can we reframe leadership to be the role of a leader is more about how do you direct and orchestrate the energy of the people around you? Because performance is the byproduct of where our energy goes. So if we're really clear on where our energy goes, where our attention is going, then we can get better results. And we see this all the time, don't we? Where you get leaders that something happens and they go, they go in this frenetic, scattered energy all over the place. Yeah. And that ripples through the team. It causes confusion. And nobody knows what they're doing, and everyone starts running around like headless chickens. And we've seen this so often in businesses, when this firefighting throws in, but actually it just causes disarray. And how would it be if the leader recognized actually in that moment is the moment that you need to become more grounded, more coherent, and really pause to go back to the rest and set and pause and just be discerning about what's going on. Is this something that I really need to get frantic about right now? Or is this something that I can just slow down, pay attention to, and realize there's different ways I can approach it? And that kind of coherence is very, very contagious within the team. And it slows all the team down. And then we can be just a lot more discerning then about the decisions that we really need to take. So I think from when we start looking at leadership, my question would be that you didn't ask is, what if leadership isn't about performance anymore? It's about how do we orchestrate the ebb and flow of the energy of the team so that everyone can work from their natural stance. And therefore we're shifting from this control stance to getting connection. We're moving from burnout to flow, and we're moving into really true leadership that is sustainable for everybody.
And do you therefore think, and I'm sorry that I'm going to ask you a question when you've just answered a question,
that's right.
do you think in order to sort of support that, the leader has to have been able to transmit their vision for the business to everybody so that when they get into that state of flow, they're able to operate without constantly referring back and saying, why are we doing this again? I've forgotten.
Absolutely. That's 100% at the top of everything. If nobody knows where they're going, nobody knows where we're going to end up. Often when my clients, I say, well, there's so many different ways that we could maybe get to. I'm in the UK, so I could get to London at the end of this call, right? But I got to know I'm going to London. Otherwise, the team will end up in Edinburgh, or somebody will end up in Dublin, or somebody will fly to New York, right? And I think having that really clear purpose and vision absolutely underpins everything, because it's that for me is the glue that pulls everyone in the right direction. And we need to remember that we need to continually articulate that to come back to communication. It's very easy for people to go, I've told everyone the vision, and we expect people to remember it, right? But it has to be embedded into absolutely everything we do day in, day out needs to be aligned with the vision, because people don't remember, and I know from, having run workshops with clients, I remember I run the same workshop. I host it at the same venue, like 5 or 6 times in a row. And my client attended as a guest each time because it was her venue. And it was a particular workshop, actually, I was running with the horses. And she said to me on the 6th workshop, she goes, that bit you said about XYZ, that was a genius, Julia. And I was like, God, that has been in every single workshop. It's such
one.
core content. And she hadn't heard it. And of course, this is what we forget about communication. People only hear what they want to hear when they want to hear it. So we've got to keep repeating the vision, where we want to go to, the strategy. And sometimes I think as leaders, we can feel a bit like a broken record. We're like, I've told everyone that, but people only hear it and get it when they want to hear it. So, yes, absolutely underpins everything, Stuart. Yeah. And I think, you know, when we've got that clear purpose, that really builds trust, because people know, right? People have got that clarity about where we're going. We know what the outcomes are. We know where we're heading. So people have got trust that what's going to happen. We've got a vision, we've got a plan. And so that really helps.
Wonderful. Julia, this has been really wonderful. It's a really great way to sort of, for me to kick off what we're doing this year. Just one small thing from me, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
I send out about one email a week on the weeks where we're doing a podcast, and it just tells you who's coming up and why you need to get in front of and be live. We've had a number of people, tens of people watching this today, so they got that from they've sat at the desk. Hopefully some of them have gone away and thought, I've got some problems I need to resolve. So if you would like to be one of those people who gets the email that sort of says somebody's coming up, go to www.systemise, that's systemise.me/subscribe. Simple form. It asks you for just your first name and an email address. I don't want any more than that, because I just want to send you an email which basically says who's coming up. So please go do that. Julia, this has been really enlightening to start with. Wonderful reset of what we should be doing as leaders. Thinking about trying to sort of allow the energy and allow the natural talents to sort of dominate, rather than somehow trying to force everybody down into a narrow path in order to sort of make things happen. So thank you so much for bringing that to us, and I really appreciate you spending some time with it. No problem at all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much indeed, Stuart. Really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.